Hi, and welcome to the Good Bloke, Not Woke podcast, where we explore masculinity from many different perspectives. In this episode, I want to go it alone because there's some things that have been on my mind, and I just wanted to talk through and share them with you and present some perspectives that might be helpful and can perhaps certainly be used to strike up some conversations in your circles. Today is Friday, the 7th of February, 2025, and it's been an interesting week. Just over a week ago, I published online that I've stepped into a new role as Global Chair of Men's Wellbeing for the Global Wellness Institute in Miami. And part of my role here is to bring together men from all across the world who are doing work in the realm of men's well-being and start to share ideas and work out how we can create content, usable and decent content to move things forward and start to really have an impact on the world. And it's so important that we have many different perspectives. It's very easy to populate such a group with white Anglo-Saxon males or men from America, Canada, Australia, Europe. We're really delving in to try and get all sorts of different men from different parts of the world, different cultures, to bring them all in, to learn from them and to share ideas and to really explore wisdom around this. And it's amazing because as soon as I got started on this, the challenges jumped up. And they're challenges that I really would rather not have to deal with, but they're there. Last week, I went to Western Australia to do some speaking for Main Roads in Western Australia. So their southwestern branch down at Bunbury, they had a day, and I went to spend the day with them, talking to them around a number of issues around well-being, both physical, mental, emotional well-being. And it was a brilliant day. In the morning, before I spoke, I went for a run, and I went down to the South Bunbury Oval and had a really good run there. And little did I know that a former West Coast Eagles player had been training there the night before and would train there again, a fellow by the name of Adam Hunter. And Adam was a bit famous because he kicked the winning goal in the 2006 grand final following a Herculean effort by Daniel Chick, who came through, laid a tackle, smothered, took the ball, handballed it to Hunter, and then laid an incredible shepherd to create space for him to run in and kick the goal. It was a huge effort by a Chick. And I know Daniel very well because I was his conditioning coach at Hawthorn, and we've stayed in touch. Now, Daniel, over recent years, he struggled a lot. He had some pretty severe injuries, and I don't feel like he was cared for very well by the football club. He also seems to have some CTE, and he's struggling. And he had some addiction problems with painkillers. There was things written about him in the press that were just not true. And he's made himself a pretty good career as a crane driver. In fact, I was talking to the people at Fremantle Port, and they said that Daniel Chick can thread a container where nobody else can. So once an athlete, always an athlete, right? So anyway, on Thursday morning, I went up to Perth and I spent the morning with Daniel. And it was really good to see him. And we had a good chat and we talked about a lot of things. And he shared with me what was going on and how things were. And he's got a beautiful heart. I describe him as a gentle spirit with a lion's heart. And that's how he played his footy. And then lo and behold, we come into this new week and we hear of the passing of Troy Selwood and then the passing of Adam Hunter, two bright young guys who are big contributors to football, and whatever struggles they hit, they couldn't make it. Now, they're well-known people, but the reality is that 7 men do that on average every day. So I've reached out to some people in football because I want to do more about this. I want to try to help expand education and get to the root of the problem to support these men to be happy and vibrant and healthy and feel successful in their lives. But then I had another conversation and this one was a doozy. I spoke with a woman who is a secretary of a suburban football club here in Melbourne, and she said to me, "We really need help." And she said to me that over 80% of the players in her football club use cocaine regularly. I nearly fell out of my chair. I know cocaine use is off the charts, but 80%, she said, is very cheap and they love it. And she said, when young guys come in from the underage up into the senior ranks, guess what happens? They get inducted into the cocaine use. Wow. It's almost exhausting. It's overwhelming to consider, how do we deal with those things? How do we get that back on track? And some people would argue to me that, well, using cocaine, that's no worse than drinking too much. And there's probably some validity to that argument. But I'm more interested in, how do we help young men get to the point in life where they feel so good about themselves and they feel so inspired about their existence that they don't need to use drugs? Because, I talk about using cocaine because, people say that when you take cocaine, your confidence explodes, as does your enthusiasm. So it's very energizing. Now, I wouldn't know, I've never tried it. It's just not my thing. But I've sort of put it to akin to, in your life, every time you need to go somewhere, somebody drives you and it gets you there quicker and it's easier and it's more comfortable than having to walk everywhere. But sooner or later, you forget how to walk, or you haven't got the strength to walk yourself. And that's regular drug use. And that's not a happy place to be. Using drugs on a regular basis is not going to end up in a good place, no matter how you want to look at it. So this has triggered a lot for me. And I've been talking a lot with Tony Rabba from the Male Hug, who's just a brilliantly passionate man who just wants to have men be happy, because he knows, like me, that when men are happy, their families thrive and the community thrives. There's a massive ripple effect here. So today I wanted to sort of talk through some things and explore these areas and sort of help you start having some discussions in and around your circles and perhaps in your workplace. So first off, I want to talk about your personal quest. Who do you want to be in this world? Your friends, have you ever asked them that question? Who do you want to be? Because one day somebody's going to stand up in a chapel somewhere or a funeral home or whatever it is, and they're going to deliver a eulogy about you and about your life. What are they going to say? What's that thing that you did that you were so passionate about that they want to talk about because you touched them with it? How do you want them to talk about your life? Now, I know that you physically won't be there to hear it, but your kids will. So what's it going to be like? What do you aspire to? Have you ever even considered that? I've watched a lot of movies in my life and watched a lot of documentaries, and there's a fair bit written about Indigenous populations and how they go through these rites of passage to support the boys to become young men and then to become warriors and then to eventually become older, wiser men and chiefs and that sort of thing. And even in cultures that were more matriarchal, the importance of shaping the men was crucial for the tribe. And I think that in our societies, we don't have that. We don't, nobody ever took me through a sort of a path and said, okay, this is where you need to go. These are the things we need to do. This is where you grow. This is where you step into a new level of responsibility. And if you've ever read the Iliad by Homer, he talks about crossing the threshold. It's that point where you step out of boyhood and step into manhood. And there's been many great books written about it. But where are the rituals in our society? Where's the crossover point for us? And it was really interesting because back in 2002, I was delivering a training program for Vietnam veterans down on the Mornington Peninsula. And one day I came in to deliver my lecture, and they were all sitting in there waiting for me, and they were angry, and they were talking in an agitated way with each other about something, and it was quite intense in the room. And I stood and watched it for a little while. Then I grabbed one of the guys and I said, "What's going on?" And he said, "Oh, Veterans Affairs, which is the government department that looks after military veterans, uh, they had changed something. And the more I inquired, I realized it was actually something very small. But in these men's minds, it was the beginning of the end. They were predicting that eventually Veterans Affairs was going to shut down on them and they'd lose all their benefits and it would be all over. Now, perhaps they've got a reason to be suspicious or angry, but I watched it for a little while and I just thought, wow, they are so dependent. They've become so dependent on Veterans Affairs. So I closed my folder and I thought, I'm not going to do my lecture today. Today calls for something else. And I did something I look back on and I think, well, it was pretty courageous actually, but I just knew that I had to do it. So I took a breath and I called out for them all to pay attention and settle down, and they did. And I just said, you guys are dumb. You're really dumb. I'm gobsmacked as to how stupid you are. Some of their backs went rigid and they looked at me and I said, seriously, I am mortified by how dumb you are. And I said, here I am. I'm 42 years of age. I said, I've got kids. And every day of my life, I contemplate this feeling inside myself of when am I going to feel like I've earned the right to feel like a man? I still feel like my adolescent self. And I said, there's something missing for me where I haven't been able to take that step and cross over. And I said, a lot of my friends are the same. We talk about it. And I said, and here I stand in front of you guys who, in your late teens or your early 20s, had to cross that threshold because you were forced into a position where you had to look death right in the eye and then walk towards it. Do you know how much that blows my mind? Do you understand how special you are? What a gift that was to you in terms of you expanding yourself and recognizing yourself as a courageous man. The room was dead silent, you know. And I said, guys, you should be out there in the suburbs, out there in your neighborhoods, finding the young guys who are going off the rails and putting a hand on their shoulders and saying, come on, mate, let's go for a walk. Because you've got some life wisdom to share with them that can help them move forward in their lives. And I reckon you're getting caught up in pettiness and it's making you stupid. But you don't have to stay that way. Anyway, I can't tell you how the rest of the session went. We had some conversations. The next week, 50% of them didn't show up and I never saw them again. But the 50% of them that stayed, man, did they step up in the community. Holy cow, they were just brilliant. And I used to catch up with them for lunch about once a year for a few years and check in with them. And they were just magnificent. And you know what? They were happy. They were really happy. So, you know, this whole thing of having a personal quest, deciding who you really want to be in this world, why not ask that to a 17-year-old kid or a 25-year-old young bloke? Who do you want to be? Is spending all your money on a flash car who you want to be? Or are you just trying to impress somebody? And it doesn't matter. It's not wrong. But young young guys don't get invited to contemplate these questions by older men who care about them, you know? It creates safety to have these conversations. And a really cool thing about men and having conversations is you don't do it face to face. It doesn't work. I recognised this growing up in a pub in Collingwood. The men, when they're having a serious conversation, they were always side by side looking out the window, having the conversation. Men need to be able to keep their eye on the horizon while they're talking. They don't want to feel like they're being analysed. Just want to feel open to just talk. And it's fully okay. So that question, who do you want to be? What's your pathway to your own evolution? What's your quest? It's a great question. You may not have an answer for it, but that's okay too. Let it sit. You don't get the answers if you don't ask the question. Yeah. And on that note of purpose and what you want to do and what you want to be, there's a point here of interest about Aboriginal Australians. The men in the Aboriginal communities, their function in life was protecting their families and their groups or their mob, and also providing, catching food, hunting, those sorts of things. And, as boys grew into men, part of the ritual was learning how to hunt, and you couldn't mess around and be an idiot out on a hunt. You had to really follow the rules and follow the training and the teachings to be silent and do what's needed to be successful in the hunt. And that's how men got their sense of worth. And I was talking to somebody who's very involved in the community, who is an Aboriginal woman. And she was telling me that one of the problems, especially around Central Australia and other parts of Australia, where the men have sort of been forgotten because welfare has come into the system, and basically free money removes the need for them to play those roles of guardian and also provider. And she said what's happened is a lot of these men, and her words were powerful, she said they're like fish that have been gutted and left lying on the pier. I went, wow, that explains so much. The alcohol abuse, the drug abuse, the violence, just incredible. And sometimes, we feel like as a society, we're doing the right thing. We're giving people money so that they can buy food and have accommodation, but we don't realize what we're taking away. And we've got to be smarter than that. There's so much to learn, because whilst I'm here trying to inspire people in our communities to find some inspiration and to find a sense of purpose in life, here we have another cohort of our society that have had their purpose just removed. And so it creates a challenge. What do we do with that? We've all got a lot of challenges to overcome here, and to continue to work to support everybody in the community to find a way that they can evolve and grow and find purpose. And that includes all those incredible Aboriginal men out there who are lost. So much to do. Who do you want to be, right? A big part of being a man is tied up with fundamental human needs. If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of human needs, he talks about the fact that we need air, water, food, and shelter to survive. But he also says that we need to have a community of people who we love and who love us and we feel part of and we feel connected with, who we can support and who we feel supported by. But he also said we need to have a sense of purpose. And that purpose is often involved in some level of service to our group. In other words, we're making a valid contribution to our group. So cool. But the question I ask is, does what you do in your life make a valid contribution in some way to the betterment of life for someone? If not, what can you add to your life that allows you to actually do that and feel good about that? You see, over time, since, well, right up until probably the digital age, men's role in the world was to provide, to protect, and overcome physical obstacles in the world that perhaps made life challenging or even threatened survival. And oftentimes the only thing that men had at their disposal was their own ingenuity and their own physical strength. Maybe it was repairing a roof or rebuilding an engine on a car or breaking a horse. So many things, digging a well, repairing fences or creating fences, physically hard work that required ingenuity, skill, perhaps some tools. And hello? Yes, sorry. Yeah, Kristen, how'd you go? You're amazing. You're amazing. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for following up on all that. Great. Thank you very much. See ya. Bye now. Oftentimes, all that men had was their ingenuity, their skill, their physical strength, and perhaps some tools to just get the job done. But see, the thing is, when they did those things and they overcame the challenge and perfected their solution, they got that little moment of, yes, feeling good about themselves, a sense of achievement. It's a good thing. We all need to feel that sense of achievement. But in the digital age, where anybody can just ring, get online and order somebody to come out and do something for them, those roles for men are diminishing in our society. So where is it the men can go to still utilize their skills, their care for their community and their guardianship and their desire to solve challenges for others? Where can they go to get access to an opportunity to be that person? And I reckon we've stepped out of the physical realm of repairing and fixing things in the physical environment into more stepping in to help our friends and colleagues who are not doing well, who are going off the rails, and who need a bit of support. One of the challenges I see is that there's lots and lots of groups all around the world doing stuff for men. But it seems to me that a lot of them are on a rescue mission, trying to rescue men who have plunged into some sort of trouble or strife or darkness. And it's good work that they do. But I feel like we're not playing the prevention game enough, because I believe that if we can do enough to really inspire men to step up, to really love life and to be a good man and to take pride in becoming a sincere and decent human being who carries his masculine qualities with a sense of accomplishment and along the way be really good to all other people, women, children, and to be guardians when others are not following that path and to help those others get better. I feel like we're going to move away from this epidemic of mental health challenges and help men find a way to exist in this world where they just really like who they are. I had a friend writing about how terrible capitalism is and how it's destroying people. I don't agree with that at all. Capitalism's just a playing field. It's things like greed, ugly competitiveness, jealousy, all those internal issues that people struggle with, out of control egos, power seeking. They're the things that tarnish capitalism. But if we can return and help everybody step onto that platform of taking pride in being decent and being a good person and being friendly and kind and available to others, then there'll be less of a quest for those things. and economies can still grow and they can move forward, but it'll be done with cleaner intentions. So I think we've got a lot to do. Now, I just wanted to take a bit of a sidestep and talk about something I've talked about before, but I think it's really crucial. And this is material that I learned from my years of being an avatar master and studying the avatar materials and learning from the incredible work of Harry Palmer. Just what Harry Palmer has delivered to the world is so astounding. It is just so powerful and so beautiful. And a lot of people won't even look. Well, that's okay. It's for people who do want to grow and evolve and get better, and people who want to gain some ascendancy over their own minds and their own paradigms and become much more aware human beings. Harry's work is not religious. It doesn't present dogma. What it does, it gives you tools so that you can navigate your consciousness. Yeah. Same as if you want to get into physical exercise, sometimes it's really good to join a gym because there's some really cool tools in there. So one of the things that Harry talks about, and this was gobsmacking for me when I first studied it, is attention and looking at what attention is and how it behaves. And it's so cool because, a beam of light, a physicist can basically count the number of photons in a beam of light. A photon is a subatomic particle. Now, let's just say that attention was made up of similar units, and you could count the number of units of attention and just say that I had 1 trillion units of attention that I could use at any one time. And, when I'm presenting this talk, I'm flowing all of my attention into the lens of the camera because I want you to feel me talking directly to you. Okay. When I'm sitting having a conversation with somebody, I'm going to give them all of my attention because I want to be really connected with them so we can have a really clear conversation and we can create understanding and move something forward in our conversation. But what happens if prior to this, I got some really bad news about something that concerned me and it worried me? Now, when I'm trying to present to you, I've got this thing that keeps popping up in my mind. And instead of my attention flowing out to you, it's flowing back into my mind and it's spinning around with concern and worry and perhaps some regret or some shoulds or some guilt. There's a whole manner of things that run around in there, right? And so then you notice that I'm sort of losing track and my attention's wandering away and I'm bringing myself back and I look a bit exhausted. And it's because I'm not able to control my attention. Now, this is a battle for all human beings because if we haven't deliberately got our attention out in the world, it's wandering aimlessly and it's probably going to end up back in our minds, or it's going to get seduced onto something else like social media or gambling apps or porn or something, television, whatever it is. Now, I'm not saying those things are bad, but when we're not deliberate, they're just sucking our attention. Yeah. Now, if you look back, say, for example, 150 years ago when people were settling this wild country, every day when those people woke up and stepped outside, survival issues demanded their attention. So they were constantly vigilant, their attention out, noticing everything that needed to be noticed to make sure that nothing went wrong. And we can learn a lot from our Aboriginal Australians because that's how they lived out in the country. They were hunters and gatherers. They lived in the bush and they moved around in the bush and they had to have so much vigilance because they needed to hunt for food. They needed to find fruits and other plants that were edible. They needed to hear everything. They needed to smell everything. They needed to feel everything. And so they live their life with their attention out in the world. That's their natural way. And the funny thing about attention is, it is part of our awareness that's flowing out into the world. And the more our attention flows out of the world, the more our awareness flows out of the world, and we pick up on stuff. And the Aboriginals are so sensitive to it, they pick up on the most profound things. And you don't have to look very far to read about incredible stories where there would have been, say, a group of Aboriginals who were perhaps on walkabout right out deep in the West Australian outback, and then an auntie dies in Broome, and somebody in the group, or more than one person in the group, feels it, and the group just turns and heads to Broome. Nobody told them, they just know. It's extraordinary. Now, we all have the capacity, but it takes a lot of training to get to that place. But let's forget about being that perceptive. Let's look at the value of learning how to get your attention out into the world, which means getting it off yourself. I'll give you an example. Think about a time where you got in your car and you drove across town, maybe 45 minutes. And when you arrived, you had no recollection of the trip. So where was your attention? In your mind, thinking about something from yesterday, ruminating about something, replaying a discussion, what you should have said, what I would say next time, or fantasizing about something in the future. It's okay. It doesn't mean it's wrong, but that's not where we need our attention. And you see, the way we get our attention off ourselves is by deliberate practice. And Harry Palmer talks about, in one of his talks that he gave, he talks about practicing virtues, being really good to other people, being kind, acknowledging people, thanking people, encouraging people, just being friendly to people, stopping and having a chat to a stranger and asking them about themselves, just giving people your time and attention. Because when you do those things, your attention is out, number one, and number two, you walk away from every one of those encounters liking yourself. It feels good. It feels really good. So this is the first thing that we've got to reclaim, this thing of getting out of our lane, getting our attention off ourselves and all the things that are wrong and things that aren't working and all the people that did bad to us. Get out of that mindset and start going out and deliberately being very good to other people, especially people you don't know. And once you start to build the skill, you'll enjoy it. For example, you're going through the supermarket checkout, young people there. Sometimes those people, they cop a lot of grief from angry people, people whose life is perhaps not going that well on that day, and they give these young people grief. Well, what would happen if you just stopped and said, "Hi, how you doing? Is this part-time job or full-time?" And often they'll say, "Oh, it's part-time." And you say, "Wow, are you studying?" And they go, "Yeah, I am." And you go, "Wow, what are you studying?" And they might say, "Well, I'm in year 11. Oh, wow, how cool. So have you got an idea of what you want to do when you leave school? And they might say, "Oh, I'm not sure yet," and you might say something to them like, "Well, don't rush. You don't have to go to university straight away. Maybe you need to save up some money and travel and just wait for that feeling to come when you get an inspiration of what you want to do with your life." It's just a perspective, right? And that young person go, "Oh, wow, yeah, maybe you've just released a few shackles from them." I don't know. Just a friendly conversation helps pass the time. And you walk away and you feel good. And that helps you get better and better and better at getting your attention off yourself. And it has a huge impact on how you feel about yourself. It really does. We often hear the term toxic masculinity. So I want to talk about that a bit because I reckon that in a lot of workplaces, the sort of radical viewpoint has basically branded any form of masculinity as toxic. Whereas a man who just stands his ground and says, actually, I feel this way about this, so I'm not going to budge, is just being a strong man who's following what he feels. But some people say, oh, you're trying to stop us, you're trying to dominate us, you're doing this, so you're toxic. Now, masculinity for me, as I've said many times, is nothing more than developing a robust moral compass, and that takes more than 5 minutes to do. And then having the courage to live by that moral compass. And sometimes things happen that that just are not right, and you've got to dig your heels in. And somebody might label you as being toxic for that. But first off, it's up to you whether you'd be bothered by what other people label you as, because really it's inconsequential. It doesn't matter. But you see, there is toxic masculinity. And I call it, I was talking to some year 12 boys at Marsland College last year, and I was just talking to them about masculinity, and this thought popped into my mind. And I said, toxic masculinity is a range that runs somewhere between idiot and dickhead. And I said, when your mates are being idiots, then part of your role to developing your masculinity is to grab them and pull them into line and say, mate, that's not cool. Why are you doing that? It's pretty sweet when you see young guys pull their mates into line. It really is. And one of the things that really challenges young men at the moment is gambling apps because it's cool to punt, right? And those gambling apps with Shaquille O'Neal and Samuel Jackson, all those people advertising, it's like the in thing to do to have a punt. But it's a disaster. For a lot of young guys, it's a doorway to hell. I ask myself, how in hell do they even get on the app when they're under 18 years of age? But they do. And by the way, a lot of young girls are doing it as well. And pretty soon, they're losing money. And I said to them, I'm going to describe to you one of the things that creates an idiot. I said, if you happened to have downloaded any form of gambling app to your phone, and you've registered your name and password, etc., you are now in the category of idiot. And of course, they all laughed and they're elbowing each other and pointing at each other and doing what boys do. And I said, and if you have actually put a credit card in there and you've had a bet, I said, then you've slid all the way down to dickhead. More laughing, more elbows, etc. And I said, but if you're actually sitting there listening to me and part of your thoughts are calculating how you can win back the money that you've lost, said now you slip into that special category of idiot, moron, dickhead. And this caused a lot of laughter, but I could feel it landing for them. I said, but one more thing. If you get up and walk out of this room, and as you walk out or once you get outside, you open up your phone and you delete that app, then you're a courageous young man. And so I'm not here to tell you what to do, but that's a dark path and you don't need to go down that path. There's lots of ways to live a good life. And so sometimes we're in a workplace and there's men who are being idiots. Maybe they're being dickheads. Maybe they're being sleazy with women. Maybe they're being creepy. Maybe they're being nasty to other people. Maybe they're bullying people. Maybe they're talking behind the boss's back, undermining the boss. There's all sorts of things that we human beings do. But you know what? We can always grab them and say, come for a walk, mate. And just ask the question, why do you need to be doing that? It's off. Why do you need that? And say, I notice when you do it, and I'm going to keep calling you out because you can't keep doing that. It's not fair to everybody else. And get support. And if he doesn't stop, then go up and get more support, not because you want to make him wrong or punish him, but because you want to help him. Yeah. So incredible. And you see, we've got to do more of that. Some of us need a lot of correction. I know I needed a lot of correction when I was younger because my ego was really big and I was certain I knew more than everybody else, right? But we need support. And like we've got these problems in society right now, we've got a lot of home invasions. Young men and sometimes young girls invading people's homes and terrorizing people, stealing their cars, doing horrible things. And then they get taken to, they get caught, they get taken to court, and the judge goes, oh yeah, they've had a hard life, and they dismiss it, and they're back out in the street, and before long they're doing it again. I was thinking about that and thought, wow, what's happening with these kids that they haven't got adults around them that can actually help them pull them into line, get them into line. Maybe they come from a broken home. Maybe their parents are not well. Maybe their parents are under a lot of financial stress and having to work really hard. There's all sorts of reasons. There's no right wrongs. It just is what it is. And I thought to myself, I wonder what would happen if anybody who was over 14, in other words, at least 15 years old or older, who got caught for doing one of these things, especially the violent home invasions. And if they got caught a second time, what would happen if the government had a policy in place where these young people automatically get sent into the military? They get to choose. Army, Navy, RAF, you choose. But you're going in for 6 years, which is the standard stint for anybody going into the military. And put them in an environment where they're put to work, they're taught discipline, they learn things that build their self-esteem, and perhaps even get a good education along the way. I wonder if we could do that. I don't know. But the reality is we've all got to get better at helping each other to get better. And if there's toxic masculinity around, then the responsibility falls upon the men who are around that. What are they not doing? What could they do better to help improve that situation? Every time I hear of a violent, domestic violence situation where some man has done some horrible things to his wife or girlfriend or whatever, I ask myself, where's his mates? Where are the people who should be keeping an eye on this guy? Surely they must know. We've got a lot to do. We've got a lot to achieve. And, I'm looking towards a really bright future. I'm not looking towards a dark future. We can do this really, really well. We just need to adjust a few things. Now, the final thing I want to talk about is community. One of the roles of men really in this life is to ensure that their family feels safe, that their partner feels safe, and that their kids feel safe. That's so important. I watch my little grandsons and sometimes I babysit them. And the older boy, the 4-year-old, he's always wanting to know when daddy's going to be home. He wants mummy, but he wants to know when daddy's going to be home. It's so interesting, isn't it? So daddy's the big safety, And sure, there's incredibly capable women out there. This is not a thing about women, but it's the role of men is to create safety, create safe spaces. And out there in the community sports clubs, football clubs, Aussie rules, soccer, rugby, cricket clubs, baseball clubs, lacrosse clubs, surf life-saving clubs, track and field clubs, all these sports clubs, And then you've got car clubs for car enthusiasts, and then you've got other services where, volunteer firefighters, where good men can create a space that young men can come into, and they can create an environment where the young men learn under strong mentorship how to step up and be decent human beings. We need that because there's so many cases where those institutions are failing really badly. And the man who invented rugby union, the reason he invented the game was because he was an old military man, and his belief was that military service was a thing that young men could step into, and they would learn how to become a decent man. Service-oriented, cooperative, courageous, supportive, well-mannered, learn how to be, a good human being in life. And at the time, there wasn't much happening military service-wise, so he invented this game that emulated a running battlefield. It's all about stealing territory, defending territory, skirmishes, breaking out, strategy to move through the defense. And if you don't understand the rules of rugby union, you don't need to. Just look at it from that perspective and you'll go, wow, that's what it is, right? And, he believed that through participation in those games, he could teach those young men those things and help them develop those qualities. And even today in rugby union, even at community level, the referee is always referred to as Mr. whatever his last name is. In Aussie rules, we call him umpy. In basketball, we call him ref. But in rugby union, it's Mr. such and such. Respect. We can reinstitute those things in the community and have dads step up and have a grander vision for the community rather than just what goes on inside their own home. And there's a program I designed some years ago during the pandemic that's never really taken off because I didn't do any launch for it, but maybe now's the time. And it's a program called Dads in the Hood. And basically, if you live in a street, and maybe the street goes for, well, let's just say 2 blocks. And maybe the street goes for a lot longer than that, but let's just say 2 blocks. Well, the aim of the project is to get all the dads together in that street and to set up a schedule so that every day between 4 p.m. and 7 p.m., there are 2 dads out on the street. So that then the mums can say to the kids who are sitting there on their devices, go outside, kick them out of the house and get the kids outside again. Get them in the outdoors, doing stuff, inventing, creating play, whatever it is. And the dads are out there to make sure that everything's safe. Because the reason that mums tend to lock their kids up is because they don't feel like it's safe to let them out. But dads can change that and make it safe. Now, you don't have to be Chris Hemsworth, you just need to be a dad who loves the kids in your neighborhood. That's all. That's all it takes. And I call that program Dads in the Hood. So maybe it's time for that. But, as I move forward with this podcast, these are the areas I want to explore. I don't want to spend too much time treating men as victims. What I'm really interested in is all the things that we can do to uplift men and get them back on the track of exploring that pathway to feeling like they are a good, sincere, courageous, and healthily masculine man. Big muscles or not, doesn't matter. And through the Global Wellness Institute, through our Men's Wellbeing Initiative, same deal, building something really special to try and get humanity back on track to somewhere that's really fully laden with beautiful virtue and a dedication to making life better, improving the living conditions of all beings. That came from Harry Palmer. Isn't that a beautiful line? Improving the living conditions of all beings and setting things up so that when we leave this life, we leave it in really good hands. So thanks for tuning in. I've got some really cool interviews coming up. I hope you share this podcast around and tell your friends about it. And don't forget my weekly audio bulletin. The links for the audio bulletin's in the show notes, and it's a free bulletin that runs for less than 10 minutes where I talk about something relating to well-being, and it comes out at 6 a.m. every Monday morning. All righty. So take care out there. Good luck. Work well. Do good things. And remember, when you're out there in the world, be that person that you needed when you were a little kid and you're in trouble or you're scared. All righty. Sending you love. Take care.